Good morning, my friends. Good morning. Figure Warriors 2 here. Hope you guys are having a good morning so far. Good morning, good morning, good morning. This is April, I think, 26th, 2022, if I recall. Sometimes the days go by fast and it kind of just a blur to me sometimes. But it's April 26th, 2022. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys are on your purpose. Again, I thank you guys for all your comments, all your subscriptions, donations, likes, those type of things. I think it's wonderful that we have a lot of people out there who are kind of in that club that we're in, the 1% club, to look at and say, okay, there's a lot of truth here. One of the truths of mankind that is gaining a little more popularity as time goes on, and we just have to kind of keep it going and understand the whole principle behind this, and that's to become the best person you can become, so you can kind of help others become the best person they become, and that's kind of the key to the whole thing. We talked about some interesting type topics the last couple days. Lola Shubham had some nice comments about the training women and men are getting in the world right now, and also about the idea that there's people who really need to be able to see the good and evil, and if you only have one, you never experience the other, you don't really understand and are grateful for what you have. So there's a reason why these things happen, and I think we have to kind of appreciate that and appreciate the struggles we've been through and realize we have to continue to keep going and to stay away from those type of things. And you can do that, my friends. You can do that. I don't necessarily have a topic for this one, but I'll just kind of talk about a few things. And I think the key to this one, really, to me, is just never giving up. And you just got to keep going. Even if you get sidetracked, even if you go off and, you have to reset yourself. Even if you go ahead and, release and, you have to kind of start again. It's not really a matter of, how long your streak is. I think this is something that's important. Yes, I'm trying to continue my streak as long as I can continue it, because the idea is that you want to try to build a habit so you continue to, build a habit of saying no and avoiding the temptation. So that's why the habits are formed. That's why 60 days, 90 days, these things are important to continue going through. But the key is you don't lose the fact that this is becoming a lifestyle change. I think the only reason I was able to do this after so long, 45 years of this, was because I knew this was all, I was trying to do it within a pattern. Now, it's hard to go cold turkey in anything you do. It's hard to go ahead and say, okay, I'm going to stop doing drugs. I'm going to stop drinking. A friend of mine recently has stopped drinking, and it's difficult to go cold turkey. You really kind of go through some major withdrawal and changes because your body is so used to what you're doing. And it's hard for the body to react in a different way when all of a sudden the thing you're doing is not something you're doing any longer. And I think that's kind of the key to how our bodies react. We're bodies of a habit because we're a body, right? And we're learning habits as we go along. And that's kind of the interesting thing about this, is that you can form habits. And so as you're doing this, you're forming a habit of, not releasing and trying to, my nose here, not releasing and trying to become the best person you can become, by learning self-control. Now, as I said, we learn these habits when we're younger. I think we observe these habits. We learn these habits. Now, whether we continue to do those habits is the key. I mean, I always go back and remember the fact that I knew a time in which I did not have to release. And as I said, I think that was up to the year I was 12, 13 years old. And so I remember vaguely, but I do remember how I felt about that. And so this is kind of what motivated me to kind of realize that, there is a certain homostasis level that you would have, that you should have as a human being. And that's not one of releasing all the time. Now, like I said, if you're a family person, if you're having children, and you're doing these type of things, releasing is going to happen. You have to do that to have a child. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And you should be fruitful and multiply. But the thing is that this should not be the main purpose of your life. And I think this is kind of where we're getting to now, taking this as a lifestyle. And that you should never do that. You should never do it. It really is a lifestyle. Maybe that's why I'm going to title this one. It is a lifestyle. This journey is a lifestyle. And I think this is the kind of thing that you have to kind of think about, that even if you fall off track, as we have a lot of people talking about, they're on 50-day streaks, 60-day streaks, 90-day streaks, and then they fall off. And I obviously the temptation and the levels of intensity are greater at your ages. So a lot of you are in your 20s and 30s, and it's much harder to stop that. And I had a few of those streaks myself. But I think in the long run, you can't also just go ahead and live through those streaks. Because those streaks, if you see them as only streaks, then you're going to have moderate success, but you're not going to have the great success you should have. And a lot of that comes back down to the fact that you are going to look at this situation as a lifestyle change. That this is part of my lifestyle change. I think once I said that was what's going to happen, then all of a sudden things changed. I think once I did not admit that this is a lifestyle change and that I'm just doing this to kind of see what happens and see if I can try to control it and look at the benefits. It's almost like peeking in the window to see the toys or whatever you're looking at inside the window, right? Those type of things, it's almost like going in half the water. It's like, for instance, you're getting half your feet in the water instead of going all in the water. It's almost like when you're taking my cold showers in the morning, going in halfway and not going in all the way. You have to kind of decide, this is what I'm going to do. And I think this is something that a lot of people have trouble with. They're not willing to go ahead and say, I'm going to put both my feet in. I'm not going to go into that cold shower. Because A, I don't know what's going to happen, and B, maybe I will end up being more hurt in the long run. And what ends up happening, I think this is a very fascinating type of thing in society. My son and I were talking about this over the weekend. You look at society, and you would never believe society could change and all of a sudden change a lot of their attitudes that they've had. Let's just take, for example, there's an attitude of eating unhealthy food, okay? So after generation, what ends up changing is that when people get changed in the school system and all of a sudden these ideas come out, all of a sudden people, and you can call it brainwashing, just different types of learning, they've learned something different. And you can actually change a civilization by actually going ahead and putting forth ideas that are different than they are now. It may take a while because people are going to reject those at first, but eventually they may catch on to them. So this is what's happened to the whole retention idea. Because many, many years ago, hundreds of years ago, if you want to call it, there was, yes, you had people who, didn't think of this, but, pornography really wasn't around like it is now. So they had to do other types of things. And I'm sure, if you just think of common sense, there was a lot of this going on, especially with the Roman Empire and a lot of different other things going on. All the other empires we're talking about. So a lot of the empires actually kind of folded themselves. But at the beginning of all empires, because they're trying to establish and they're trying to build a nation, no matter what nation you're talking about, they become very conservative. they become to the point where they're trying to really make sure that they are strong with those basic values because they need to build up that society. Now, once that society is built up, well, then there's some laxity there. And what ends up happening is people become laxed in their values. And after a couple hundred years, which is happening in almost every type of dynasty you can think of, and it's almost at our point now, 200, 250 years, all of a sudden the country kind of folds from within. Because you go from being very strict to now very open and liberal and all that kind of stuff you want to call it, right? And all of a sudden now you're too much the other way, and now you need to reset back the other way. And this is when sometimes societies fall because they can't get back to the other level and they can't exert self-control. So all we're really doing here is going back to a natural state that we should be in, that most people were in a long time ago. But because of what's happening, they truly believe something is right because they just don't understand history and what's happened to people. And this is why the Bible, to me, is the most practical, besides the great spiritual relationship you have with the Lord. It's the greatest book that ever has been. Because when you look at the practicality of the stories and the ideas, you're talking about human life here. And human life doesn't change. Things around human life may change. And you can build a lot of different things around human life. But the actual human life and how people behave, that doesn't change at all. And so when you look at this thing, you can kind of look at the Bible and say, okay, this is how people are behaving now. This is how they behaved before. The fear, the manipulation, the love, the caring, the generosity, all these things, the sins that people commit, it happens over and over again. And a lot of times, people don't understand what they're committing because they don't know God. They don't know there's a God. They believe there is no God. They believe that they're God. You can either believe you're the God or there's a God. You can't do both. So really, when you really look at this, people who say they can do both, they don't. They are either the God, which most people who don't believe in God are. You know, when you're talking about being atheist or agnostic or something like that, you really believe you're the God, or you got control of what's happening around you, or you believe that there is a God. Now, you want to call that God, environment, or whatever you want to call it, I guess you can do that. But you have to believe in something other than yourself. And obviously, I would have issues with some of that. But I mean, I think that the key is you're either believing you as a God or something around you, or something more powerful. Now, the question then becomes, then, as you look at this, how can I go ahead and continue on my path? Well, you realize, again, this is a lifestyle change. And if you're committed to make that lifestyle change, then nothing's going to get in your way. But if you're tempted, like we've had in these civilizations, where you go from being strong in your viewpoints and saying we have to kind of go to strict rules, to now being very open with it and not having any kind of value system or any sort of idea and breaking those rules all the time, then they become no rules. And now all of a sudden, now you have a society that's broken. And it's hard to bring it back. That's why a lot of societies collapse. That's why it's easy for the, all the tribes to come in, including Attila the Hun, and take over Rome, because Rome was very weak. Not because it, was somehow losing battles on the outside, became weak from within. Because this is what happens when all of a sudden you get caught up in all these sinful behaviors, and you're not really, you're becoming weaker, not only from a physical standpoint, but a mental standpoint, and all these other types of things too. So you lose that sort of masculine energy when you give it away all the time, and that's the type of thing that leads to, people taking over countries and those type of things you do. So we're not doing ourselves any favors with all the stuff that we're talking about when it comes to temptation and things like that as a country, which is why I explain to a lot of the problems we've had, because people are mentally, they're weaker, and they're physically weaker because of all the releasing all the time and not really having a purpose and goals, and spending their whole life focusing on pleasure and only having things that are going to make them feel good, and not trying to help society become better through themselves being better. All right. So once again, as we talk today on April 26, 2022, we have always a lot of interesting things going on in the world, but you always see the same commonality type of thing, that the people who really are the ones that really can make a difference are the ones who are in a level of self-control themselves. And I think that's the key to it. Now, what you see on the outside with people is one thing, but there's a lot of posturing and play act that goes on with people, especially with the media. What you got to do is kind of look at the person and say, what kind of person is this? Does this person, you can probably guess a lot of times if people have a level of self-control and they have retention and they have these type of things. You can guess. And a lot of times with men, especially between the ages of 40 and 60, you get people who become really successful because they can transmute that energy. We talked about this with Napoleon Hill in his book, Think and Grow Rich. You talk about a lot of people who between their ages of 40 and 60 are the ones who make a lot of success, money, all kinds of success in different areas, because they're able to transmute. They don't focus on girls and women as the most important thing, and they focus on succeeding and achieving their goals and doing a lot of these type of things that you would normally do if you weren't just caught up with all kinds of temptation and things you do. And that's, I think, where the key is with a lot of people, that they can succeed with this kind of stuff because of that. It's more of a matter of doing that. So anyway, I think I saw some kind of flashing light there, so I don't know what the heck that was. But all right, guys, so April 26, 2022. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys have a great day. And we'll talk really soon. Once again, this is a lifestyle change. And you have to realize you're in for the long haul. So don't get upset if something happens. Don't get upset if you release. Keep going and don't give up. All right, guys, have a great day and battle on.